guys, thank you for joining me today for another episode of my channel RX for Fi. As you may know already, we talk about pharmacy and financial independence and early retirement on this channel. So I know the first couple of videos that I made were very heavily focused on pharmacy. Today I wanted to finally make that jump into the financial realm of my channel. I've been looking forward to this a lot. I'm very passionate about learning about managing my own finances, and I'm passionate about sharing what I've learned with others because I feel that once you have control of your finances, it can greatly improve your life in many, many ways. And we should all be in a position to make intelligent and educated decisions about our personal finances. So again, thank you for joining me today, and let's jump right in. Let's start by defining FIRE. What is FIRE? You may already have heard the term. It's an acronym. It stands for Financial Independence, Early Retirement. FIRE is a lifestyle or a way of life. It is a community of people who choose that lifestyle as opposed to the more common societal norms. So it's kind of an alternative lifestyle, I guess you could say. It's also a different way of thinking. All of these combined are an effort to help you become financially independent or financially free. I personally think of that as a point where you have accumulated enough wealth to be able to support and sustain yourself indefinitely without actively working. There's a lot of controversy and gray area about what is actively working and what is passively earning income, but I think of it as essentially avoiding a 9-to-5. So it's somebody who has enough wealth that they can live off of it and that they don't have to go to their 9-to-5 or their primary job. Now, this person does not necessarily lay on the beach all day and drink mojitos and what other drink they might like, and they're not on the couch all day watching TV. This is not necessarily that kind of individual, even though they may have more days where they have the opportunity to relax and enjoy their life in that way if they so choose. But it is a person who doesn't have to worry about the bills if they take 2-3 months off of work, or it is somebody who's not worried about living paycheck to paycheck. They might just work a side hustle, or they may do temporary or seasonal work as opposed to your typical 9-to-5. Again, the early retirement, not everybody's going to have the traditional retirement that we think of. Oh, we hit age 65 and we retire. We don't work a single day after that. You just get in your RV and you travel all the time. That's not necessarily early retirement. That's not going to be possible for everybody. So what is very different about the FIRE community? There are many different aspects. The first is it can be thought of as kind of a frugal and in some ways restrictive lifestyle. Now, that doesn't mean that you say no to all sorts of spending, or you say no to purchasing anything that brings you happiness or pleasure. Far from it. As I interpret it, it's more about being mindful of what you're spending your money on, and it's not about spending money left and right to build the most extravagant and the most comfortable lifestyle possible. In fact, if you choose the FIRE or the FI lifestyle, chances are there are going to be moments in instances where you will not be comfortable. You may find yourself cooking dinner more often, whereas you may want to go out all the time. But you make a conscious decision to cook dinner and save money in order to achieve a goal later on, and that possibly being financial independence and early retirement. It's a very long process. It's not a quick process. So it's about making a lot of very conscious and a lot of very well thought out decisions that ultimately impact you in the long term. So if you are interested in FIRE and you want to try it, you have to be the kind of person that can delay gratification. It's not an easy lifestyle, and it requires a lot of discipline, especially up front, as you develop good habits that allow you to use your money in the most financially savvy and financially wisest ways. Okay, so I hope some of that made sense, and I'll elaborate a little bit later. But maybe we should talk about a more important topic, and that is how is FIRE even possible, and how does it work? And you're telling me I have to make all these sacrifices and I have to live this kind of miserable lifestyle, and for what? How does it even work? How it works is a little bit more complicated, and I will try to explain it in as simple of a concept as possible. I definitely encourage you, if you are interested in FIRE, read up on the Trinity study and the 4% rule. Essentially, the Trinity study is a study done by a major university. I don't remember the exact university. But this study was done, and this study determined if you have a portfolio of stocks and bonds worth X, if you are able to live off of 4%, no more than 4% of that portfolio on an annual basis, then you have roughly a 98% of that lifestyle being sustainable, meaning you could continue to withdraw 4% from your portfolio year after year after year, and that money, that pot of money, will not dry up. The stock market and the bond market will continue to replenish, and it will be sufficient for you to be able to live off of it. It's a very complicated study. It's a very interesting study. I certainly encourage you to read up on it. And that's the 4% rule that was derived from this Trinity study. Let's apply some numbers to it so it actually makes sense. Let's say you are able to live off of $40,000 a year. That includes your typical annual living expenses. So we're talking about the necessities primarily. We're talking about food, shelter, whether it be an apartment or a house mortgage or some kind of shelter. We're talking about the utilities that you will need to pay for, healthcare that you may need to pay for. Perhaps it's health insurance of some kind that you may need to purchase. We're talking about other living expenses that you might come across year to year, including transportation. Transportation's probably another major one. So if you can keep those living expenses to $40,000 a year, if you have a portfolio of stocks and bonds, well diversified, and that portfolio is worth $1 million, you can withdraw on an annual basis $40,000 from that $1 million portfolio, and that has approximately a 97% chance of being sustainable. The stock market and the bond market will continue to bring in more income for you than you are using, and this accounts for inflation as well. So over time, the value of the dollar will continue to decrease. the profits and the dividends that you receive from your portfolio will surpass what you use up and will surpass inflation. Now, I do want to mention two important things, and that is that on average, the stock market, you can expect about a 7% increase in value of your stocks, of your assets, on an annual basis. So that is why, as you can see, if you withdraw 4% from your portfolio each year, the 7% will roughly account for it. Your wealth will actually continue to grow without you actively working a 9-to-5 job. Now, obviously, there are going to be bad years in the stock market, and for instance, this year has certainly been a wild, wild horse going up and down, and it's been totally unpredictable. There will definitely be years where what your stocks and bonds bring in will be less than what you spend. But on average, over the history of the stock market, for most people, it will increase by 7%. So that's what this concept is heavily based on. And that has been since the history of the inception of the stock market. And another important thing I would like to mention, having that $1 million, for example, in a high yield savings account is not equivalent. When I opened my high yield savings account with Marcus Bank earlier this year, the interest rate was good. It was comparatively good to other interest rates. But interest rates associated with savings accounts are pretty awful and have been for a long time. That interest rate was 1.7%, and already it has dropped to 0.8%. This will not even account for inflation. So having that $1 million savings in a savings account will not be sustainable. It will not regenerate and replenish itself sufficiently in order for you to be able to live off of that. So that's pretty much the nitty-gritty of it. Again, I'm sorry I may not be the best person I'm not an economist, I'm a pharmacist. So I may not be the best person to explain the Trinity study and the 4% rule. But from what I've read of it, it is very legitimate and it makes a lot of sense. And there has been a community of people that have been able to utilize this study and essentially achieve financial independence. They have reached their FI, or financial independence number or value. That brings me to our next topic. What is your FI number? An FI number is going to be different for every single person depending on their lifestyle. So if you have a very extravagant lifestyle, your FI number or financial independence number will be much greater than somebody who is a very simple, low cost lifestyle. And the FI number is the number you need to achieve in order to be able to withdraw 4% and be able to sustain your living expenses and sustain your way of life. It's actually quite simple to calculate once you definitively and accurately know what your annual living expenses are. If you are able to live on $40,000 a year, let's say you've been tracking your spending for a couple of years, and you know accurately and definitively that you can easily live on $40,000 a year. You multiply that by 25, and that is your FI number. And you have somewhere in the realms of 95 to 100% chances of successfully living off of that as long as you have that money invested in stocks and bonds. Now, if you want your chances of success to be even greater, or if you want to live an even more extravagant number, take your annual living expenses and multiply that by 30. That means your chances of success have improved even more because you're not withdrawing 4%, you're withdrawing less than 4% of your portfolio. Some people refer to that as fat fire. There's no right or wrong way to pursue financial independence, there's many ways to achieve it. And it's kind of a custom thing, tailored to your individual lifestyle. People go about it in many different ways. Some people focus on minimizing their expenses. So they kick their frugality up to the highest gear that they can. They track their spending even more closely, and they focus on saving as much money as possible. Other people focus on increasing their income, so they kind of approach the problem from the other end, and they work on increasing their income. Maybe they work more jobs if that is something that their career allows them to do, or maybe they start a side hustle of some kind. They might dabble in entrepreneurship. They might try to pursue passive income by perhaps purchasing a rental property and renting that out. The whole concept is that, again, you want to grow the gap in between what you're spending and what you're making, because that is the money that will actually accumulate and grow. So whatever you make that you don't spend, that's the money that is active. And what you do with that money is very critical. The best thing that you can do with that money that you do not spend is to invest it. A good way to invest it would be into low-cost index funds or a good rental property that will bring in $500, $600 a month. Before I stray too far off topic, the important takeaway is that people pursuing financial independence, they are on one degree or another, they are trying to increase their income and cut way down on their expenses in as many ways as possible. And then they are investing that money. They are investing that gap money between what they're spending and what they're making. So as I mentioned a little earlier, the FIRE lifestyle is perhaps not always the most fun one at first. Again, there's a lot of delayed gratification. You may make some sacrifices now in order to have more time and more opportunities later on in the future. It may not be the most fun lifestyle. It may not be what a lot of people, particularly young people, choose to do. Instead of going to the bar and having a couple of drinks every single night, because that can be costly, these people would choose to stay home or entertain at home. And it may be the opposite of what a lot of their peers and their friends are doing, and that has its own challenges. Because it's an alternative lifestyle, it's sort of hard to find your niche. It's not always easy to find support, because it's sort of the opposite of what society has taught us to do. Society kind of has focused on spending a lot of money to get a great education, and then you get a great job, and then through that job you are able to make a lot of money, and then once you are making a lot of money, you spend a lot of money on a fancy house, a large fancy house, a large fancy car, to make all that hard work worth it. Whereas with FIRE, you probably have an education, you have a job that you work hard at, but instead of spending that money on a fancy house, a fancy car, and partying and having a good time every evening, you're being much more selective with what you spend that money on, and you're investing a lot more. And that is all in order to achieve financial security, achieve a position where you're not paying off debt. In fact, you have no debt at all. You don't owe anybody anything. You're building your wealth, and you are saving towards a retirement, which might actually come earlier if you are disciplined and wise enough in your decisions. So what makes all these sacrifices even worth it? That's a very important and a very valid question. I don't know a better way of explaining it than explaining the motivations behind to why I am trying to learn about fire and why I am applying many of its concepts or attempting to apply many of its concepts to my own life. For me personally, I think the biggest driving force towards fire for me is the ability to regain control of my time. Time is my most valuable resource. I see how much time I dedicate to my work, my primary source of income, my 9 to 5, my career in pharmacy, which is actually not 9 to 5. There have been times in my career where I've invested 55 hours of my week towards that. I'm not interested in helping a large corporation become even wealthier. I'm interested in growing my own wealth and regaining my time and working for myself, not necessarily for somebody else. So to me, financial independence is a way of regaining control of that precious, valuable time. I'm also hopeful that through this there's that possibility of me being able to achieve an earlier than usual retirement. I'm not anticipating to retire at the age of 35. I'm already 31. I highly doubt that's going to happen. But I would like to retire earlier than 65 to have that time to travel and to spend more time with my family and to be able to enjoy living instead of working my 9 to 5. And I feel like by putting in the effort and the discipline now that I am establishing my wealth for the future, which I will be able to live off of, and it will allow me to pursue other goals and ambitions. I understand that this will not happen instantaneously. I understand that achieving financial independence will take me many, many years, and it will require me to make many difficult decisions. So guys, I know this has been kind of long-winded, and I hope it's made sense. I've been rambling a little bit, but essentially I just wanted to give you an introductory crash course on FIRE, financial independence and early retirement. I wanted to just build the very basic building blocks of it and to introduce you to the concept, and I wanted to explain just some of the thought processes that I have, and is why it's sparked an interest in me and why I'm interested in pursuing it. So I appreciate you listening. I hope this has inspired you to learn more about financial independence and financial freedom. I hope you will continue to join me day after day, video after video on my journey towards FI. Please, if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and hit the like button. That helps me immensely. And I hope that this video was of value and that it taught you something or sparked some interest. So thank you very much for listening. I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day.